Parliament of Iran approved a bill to suspend cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. In Belarus, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel arrived to strengthen bilateral trade and guarantees in strategic supplies. And in Paraguay, health workers mobilizing in Asunción to demand decent working conditions and reject any attempt at privatization or outsourcing. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. Where with the news, stay with us. Parliament of Iran approved on Wednesday a bill to suspend cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. A member of the presidency of the Iranian parliament, Alireza Salimi, announced the decision and pointed out that it will be sent to the Supreme National Security Council for its approval. He rejected that the organization did not condemn the attacks against the nuclear facilities of the Persian country and emphasized that this measure seeks to prohibit the entry of inspectors of the agency to the country, to sanction those who allow their entry. He also emphasized the intention to continue working on nuclear energy for peaceful purposes in spite of the threats and recent attacks by Israel and the United States. In this context, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf highlighted the blow dealt by the National Armed Forces to Israel's military and security infrastructure and called a symbolic attack the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear facilities.
For the first time, the military and security infrastructure of the fake country of Israel were destroyed. All of its cities became unsafe. The myth of its invincibility and the Iron Dome collapsed. With Iran's offensive power put on full display in the last strike, the residents of this land will never sleep peacefully again. There will be no security for investors and no hope for a future life in this occupied territory. The United States, having witnessed the resilience of the Iranian people, attempted to save face with a symbolic attack. In response to Iran's proportionate retaliation targeting its regional military command center, it proposed and began pursuing a ceasefire.
And precisely, early U.S. intelligence assessment indicated that the U.S. military strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities failed to destroy the core components of Tehran's atomic program. The report indicated that the nuclear facilities at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan did not suffer as much damage as the White House expected, being limited mainly to surface structures, including the site's electrical infrastructure. The document exposed that much of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was moved to secret nuclear facilities prior to the United States attacks. The report shows that the preliminary findings contradict President Donald Trump's initial statements that the facilities were completely destroyed. And on Wednesday, the ceasefire between Iran and Israel continues, giving rise to cautious hope that it could lead to a long-term agreement. Tehran's governor Mohammad Sadegh Mohammadian said over 120 homes had been completely destroyed and over 500 others have suffered significant damage. Tehran put the death toll in Iran at 606, with 5,332 people wounded, mostly civilians. Authorities on Wednesday announced the gradual restoration of internet services across the nation. Zionist criminal attacks also targeted Iranian nuclear facilities and killed top military commanders and nuclear scientists. The Department of Economy revealed that each Iranian missile that hit Israeli cities resulted in an average of 4,000 compensation claims from the affected settlers. The briefing detailed that Iranian attacks have compelled some 18,000 Israelis to move in just 10 days. Particularly, 12,000 people have been staying in hotels, while 6,000 have been renting houses. In this context, tax authorities officials warned that about 34,000 Israelis filed compensation claims for damages caused by Iranian strikes. Authorities added that the total number of claims increased to 75,000 in the last 2 years, which could cause a collapse in case assistance be delayed. And on the sidelines of the NATO summit held in the Netherlands, U.S. President Donald Trump says the ceasefire was a victory for all, including Iran, that showed its large military capabilities.
No, I think it was just a tremendous victory for everybody, including Iran. Look, you know, they've got a country, and they've got oil, and they're very smart people, and they can come back. Israel got hit very hard, especially the last couple of days. Israel was hit really hard. Those ballistic missiles, boy, they took out a lot of buildings. And they've been
Reports unfolded that near 380,000 Palestinians had been wiped out by the Israeli regime since October 7, 2023. Investigations revealed that the Zionist attacks and the blockade of humanitarian aid have impacted on the living of the Gazan population. In addition, it was estimated that half of the missing victims had been children. Moreover, analysts concluded that several of the missing may have died, so they claim that the death toll of Palestinians could reach much more than 56,000 fatalities currently recorded. Before the onset of the Israeli genocide, the civilian population in the Gaza Strip had been assessed at 2,227,000, but the aggressions and the Zionist fire have made decrease its population considerably. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs denounced the killing of Palestinians at food distribution points in the Gaza Strip. Director of OSHA, Jonathan Whittle, pointed out that trying to survive in Gaza becomes a death sentence. In a briefing, Whittle warned that Israel is carrying out a massacre and is using hunger as a weapon. The organization denounced that Israel's militarized humanitarian assistance mechanism contradicts international norms.
Israel's militarized humanitarian assistance mechanism is in contradiction with international standards on aid distribution. It endangers civilians and contributes to the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. The weaponization of food for civilians, in addition to restricting or preventing their access to life-sustaining services, constitutes a war crime and under certain circumstances may constitute elements of other crimes under international law.
We now have our short break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The governments of Belarus and Cuba held a high-level meeting in which they recognized the possibilities and strategies for bilateral trade and economic growth. The Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and his Cuban counterpart Miguel Diaz-Canel met to boost negotiations as part of cooperation and interest in expanding ties. Negotiations were aimed to enhance Cuban development in terms of food security, modernization of industry, construction, transport, energy and mining, and access to quality medicines. Meanwhile, the Belarusian administration has been assessing joint productive capacities, supply of raw materials, experiences, and technologies for dairy and meat production, among others. And Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang delivered a speech at the World Economic Forum known as the Summer Davos, held in China, where he called for collaboration between countries in the field of trade and investment. Li asserted that globalization cannot be reversed, urging nations not to turn trade into a political or security issue. These words highlight a pragmatic approach that aligns with the need for a more equitable world order, where emerging powers such as China seek to redefine the norms and rules governing international trade. Li also showed an optimistic outlook on the Chinese economy, announcing that measures will be implemented to turn China into a large-scale consumer power.
Currently, the international economic and trade landscape is undergoing profound changes. Influenced by geopolitics and technological innovation, economic structure, and various other factors, the global economic landscape is undergoing significant transformation and adjustment. The global economy is deeply integrated, and no country can grow or prosper alone, isolated from the world. Cooperation is the inevitable choice for development.
And in the Netherlands, NATO countries committed to invest 5% of GDP annually on defense and security-related spending by 2035. The higher defense spending goal came as a response to a demand by US President Donald Trump and to Europeans' fears that Russia poses a growing threat to their security. The new spending target is a jump worth hundreds of billions of dollars a year from the previous goal of 2%. The final declaration also includes a line promising further support for Ukraine. For its part, Russia has accused NATO of being on a path of militarization and warned of the villainization of the country in order to justify its defense spending increase. In this context, the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez defended his government's decision not to increase Spain's defense spending, stressing on the high cost the pledge would signify for the nation.
If we had accepted what was proposed, Spain would have to spend more than 300 billion euros by 2035. Where do these resources come from? From more taxes on citizens? From cuts in the education, health and pension systems? When I listen to the head of the opposition and the opposition criticizing the position of the Spanish government, it is clear to me that if there were another prime minister here today, Spain would have signed up to 5% of GDP in defense today. And that would be an absolute mistake for Spain.
And demonstrators who had staged a sit-down protest against NATO at a petrol station were arrested Wednesday by the police in The Hague. In this regard, activists denounced their detention as well as the mistreatment they had received there. Likewise, they rejected the agreement reached by NATO leaders on surging up to a 5% of their annual GDP in defense spending after US President Trump put pressure on the organization. However, some countries, as Spain, officially announced not being able to meet such target.
Because what it is doing, it's protecting the interests of the rich, of the very few, of the 1%, and the 1% is making money off of fossil fuels. They're making money off of arms. They're making money out of the agricultural system that is ruining the planet, the food system, and most people, I think, are basically suffering from it, and only very few people are benefiting.
Bosnian authorities recorded 40-degree temperatures as the hot African front arrived in southern Europe. Bosnian Weather Service issued an orange alert and called on residents to stay hydrated and avoid exposure to high temperatures between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. local time. Local authorities in Tuzla reported a significant increase in the number of people looking to cool off in the Panonsko artificial lake, which is the main tourist destination during the summer in this region. Weather experts say that this is expected to be the hottest summer on record due to the early arrival of the heat. We have our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For our short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Health sector workers in Paraguay mobilized to demand decent working conditions. On a day of protest called the Great White Tide, health personnel gathered outside the Ministry of Public Health in the Paraguayan capital. Medical workers who came from various regions of the country rejected any attempt to privatize or outsource public services. They denounced such attempts as an attack on the quality of service and their contractual rights. Union leaders emphasized the urgent need for improvements to working conditions and the public health system. In Argentina, as every Wednesday, retirees will hold the March of Dignity in the vicinity of the National Congress to demand an increase in pensions. General Secretary of the State Workers Association, Rodolfo Aguiar, said the day of protest is the beginning of a plan of struggle that will continue to escalate. On the other hand, university professors and non-teaching workers, plus students, are carrying out a 48-hour strike on Wednesday and Thursday, in view of the lack of response from the national government to the budgetary and salary demands. This initiative seeks the support of the National Congress in order to guarantee the protection and support of the finances of the national universities. And the Panamanian government extended the state of siege for 5 more days in the province of Bocas del Toro after protests against Law 462 of the Social Security Fund. The Cabinet Council approved the extension of said measures, which establishes the restriction of constitutional guarantees, alleging that it seeks to re-establish order in view of the disturbances and vandalism registered in the province. Among the restrictions still in place in the area is the suspension of internet and mobile telephone services. Authorities indicated that 267 people were arrested in the province in the midst of the protests. And according to international organizations, Haiti is currently one of the countries with the highest number of victims of forced displacement. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees reported that over 21 million people have been forced to flee their homes. According to the organization's data, Haiti, Colombia, and Venezuela have the largest displaced civilian populations in the Americas, consisting of internally displaced persons and asylum seekers. In Haiti, armed gangs control over 85% of the capital, Port-au-Prince, as well as other areas of the Caribbean island. This has resulted in the death of over 2,680 people and injuries to at least 957 others. In other stories, in Kenyan demonstrators clashed with police on Wednesday in a protest to honor those killed and missing a year ago at Gen Z rally in rejection of the president's bill to surge taxes. Protesters demanded justice for the murder of at least 60 people and the abduction of 80 more, in addition to demand justice for the killing of a blogger and teacher, Albert Okwa, a month ago while he was in police custody. Regardless the warnings of Ruto administration, the victims' families, human rights groups, and youth organizations, alongside former Chief of Justice David Maraga and Senator Okiya Omtata, took to the streets in Nairobi and many cities across the country. The capital is currently on high alert and schools are closed nationwide due to the unrest. So far, 10 activists have been shot on peaceful march.
Here to demand justice for our Mashujas. 64 Kenyans were killed last year in cold blood. Up to this point in time, not a single officer has been held to account. So we are here to demand justice. Justice in terms of compensation, justice in terms of arrest of those officers who are involved, justice in terms of police reforms, because too many Kenyans are losing their lives in the hands of the police. So we want justice for everyone so that we can move forward as a country.
International organizations such as UNESCO have spoken out in favor of using technological tools to promote inclusive education and improve the quality of learning. In Cuba, a peculiar initiative makes use of these tools to bring literature closer to teenagers, children, and young adults. Our correspondent, Eric Mendez, with details.
Vivimos en los tiempos de las multipantallas.
We live in times of multi-screens and instantaneousness. From Cuba, a private company is betting on information and communication technologies to bring young people closer to literature.
We have very pleasant experiences working for and with children in the development of digital products as an alternative to empower them. to provide them with autonomy in learning, taking into account that multiple intelligence, the forms of autonomous independent learning are increasing, followed, and that linked to the high use of technologies favors to development of a set of solutions that promote the use of information and communication technologies for healthy uses, for recreation, but also for the development of knowledge.
Los cuentos de siempre, poesía para niñas y niños.
Traditional stories, children's poetry, and literary classics leave the paper and arrive in new formats designed for new audiences.
For me, it has been a double challenge. First, because you have to put your heart into it, put the pump, and take it to the children. And second, because I feel part of the formation of a generation that will not stay in the simple concept of the story that they were told when they were babies, but they will continue to learn even as teenagers, listening to stories, narratives, dramas, romance, but in another format.
En diferentes espacios como la Feria Internacional.
These proposals have been presented in different spaces, such as Havana International Book Fair. The value of these productions lies not only in the rescue of the stories and their adaptation to audiovisual format, but also in the fact that these audiobooks make literature more accessible.
Listening to audiobooks or seeing the text in a different way with a person narrating the text who is accessing it not only for people with special needs but also for people who do not have much time are also part of that public, of that accessibility that in some way is solved by these complementary formats to the physical book that we produce here in the company.
Acercar las historias de siempre a las generaciones.
Bringing the stories of all times to present and future generations, and doing so with new tools associated with technology, opens another door to the imaginary universes treasured in centuries and centuries of literature.
Eric Méndez, teleSUR, La Habana.
Ladies, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.